Andrew.
Hey, Wolfie, we just want to grab.
Hi.
Hey, we just want to grab a quick intro from you. We call it a drop. So if you could just say, "Hey,"
What are we dropping on the floor?
Yeah, no, it's an
This is
intro.
Wolfie Monster, and I'm dropping Andrew on the floor. Podcast on the floor. Did I do? How much are we getting paid for this?
No,
This is Wolfie Monster, and I'm dropping all the podcasts on top of Andrew. Woody does the rudder player do Woody podcast on Andrew. What's the name of this show?
this is the Master of One podcast.
The Master of Andrew podcast.
No, the Master of One podcast.
Master One of Andrew, the podcast. And with two other guys, podcast.
Yeah, no, that's. I think that's perfect. I think you nailed it. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you, Wolfie?
They can find me right here, Andrew.
No,
That's a dumb question. I'm right here.
No, like a website. Like you have.
You can find me on the website on Wolfie Monster.
No, yeah, no. That's
dropping on the podcast on the website.
Nope, that's great. So for this Sandbox episode, we're excited to talk to somebody whose work we've talked about and shared on the show many times before. But we are talking to designer and illustrator, creator of Leaky Timbers, Scoutmaster Joey Ellis. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Joey to the show.
Hello.
This is really weird, like putting all of the voices with the mouths.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing all you guys. So
It's
anyway,
a little bit of a letdown, probably.
No. It was very thrilling. So thank you all for having me. This is great.
You look thrilled.
Wait,
This is as excited as I get.
Are you actually a scoutmaster? I don't know if there's a difference between I'm a parent, I'm involved versus like are you a scoutmaster?
Technically, I'm a den leader, which we don't need to get into this. That's what Creative South. That's what the workshop at Creative South is going to be. Is me just talking about scouting.
Explaining the structure of everything.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yes. This is information that I didn't have several years ago, and now I have it, and I'll have it forever. So
Yeah.
Well,
Hooray.
listen, in the context of this show, you're the master of that, as much as I'm the master of art and design. So you are a scout master, at least for the next 45 minutes. And then you can go back to being a den father or whatever.
whatever.
Den
I
leader.
would like for you, Andrew, to just email me, just go through and list what you think the leadership within scouting is called, because it's going to be way better than whatever it really is.
We need your version of the org chart for Cub Scouts.
Listen, I will gladly rebrand the Cub Scout branding. Absolutely.
Oh, it needs it. Anyway.
All right, so Joey, welcome to the show. We've been wanting to have you on for a little bit, and finally we're able to work it out, schedules and all that stuff. And so we're super thrilled to have you here. We're all big fans of your work. We know several people in the Slack channel have requested you to be on the show, so they will be happy that you're here. But tell everybody who you are and what you do.
My name is Joey Ellis, and I am a designer and illustrator. Gosh, what do I do? I think when you own your own shop and you're kind of this like, oh, I want to try this, I want to try that. It's really difficult to label. I think designer and illustrator probably makes the most sense because, like we were talking earlier, it's what sells easiest. If you say, oh, I also like making weird puppet videos and I like doing comics, like the conversation kind of is like, oh, I don't know what to say to you now. So I'm a designer and an illustrator.
Yeah, and so you kind of threw it in there as kind of a side deal, but you mentioned the weird puppet show. Tell everybody. We'll dive deeper into this, I'm hoping, as this show goes on. But that weird puppet show, what is that, so that people have a general idea as we kind of go into this?
So just to kind of give everybody my my long-winded backstory. So I've been in Charlotte since 2004. So I graduated from East Carolina, which is in Greenville. It's very close to the coast here in North Carolina. And so moved to Charlotte in 2004 and worked as a graphic designer for a few different agencies. And then in 2012, decided I'd always been really interested in illustration, and decided, well, in order for me to do the kind of illustration that I wanted to do, which was very character-based, very story-driven kind of stuff, I'm going to have to go out on my own.
Yeah.
So I've been doing that since 2012, and I came into the app world when it was like super hot and people were just throwing money out the window. If you had an app for the smartphone, they would just, here's a briefcase of money.
Right.
And so it was an absolutely fantastic time. And my whole goal in this was to get into books at some point, because I think, as artists, when you're very, very young, like we all are, you're very, very young.
Yeah.
If you're not working, you're not getting paid. Like, it's very difficult to create something that will generate income while you're not working. And so to me, and I think we've all tried, the merchandise, like T-shirts and posters and stickers and this and that. And some of us are really, really good at it and like that lifestyle of, going to all these different shows and stuff like that. I just was not cut out for that. I couldn't do that. But for me, books was where it needed to be. And so, and we can get into this much deeper later. And if you come to Creative South, that's what Luke Flowers and I are going to be talking about in our workshop. We're going to spill all the secrets of all the mistakes that we have made.
It'll be worth the price of admission, I'm sure.
It will be worth the price of admission. So I always wanted to get into books. And, here in Charlotte, it's like, it's not really a hotbed for like the publishing world. You really need to be in New York. Maybe Los Angeles, but really New York is where all the big publishing houses are. Well, Charlotte's not New York. So anybody that has ever tried to get into publishing knows it is extremely difficult. You can be the best artist in the world and still a publisher will not take you seriously, or an agent or what have you. And so back in like 2013, 2014, I knew I needed to make my own book to kind of prove, because I didn't have anything. I just thought like, if I have a collection of pretty pictures, that will at least get me in the door, and it didn't. And so I was like, okay, I'm not getting any opportunities here. I need to just kind of make my own thing. Well, Kickstarter had come along. And so I decided I'm going to do my own graphic novel. And I love graphic novels because they're kind of like making movies. So you can, with picture books, I really, really struggle with picture books because the story has to be so precise and dead on and so tightly edited. And I'm not there yet. I think I'll eventually get to that point. But with graphic novels, you can kind of like run around the parking lot a few times and build these big arcs and create these big worlds. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do a graphic novel, but I want to do it very, very simply. Like, I do believe if you do these self-initiated projects, you can't, if your dream is to build a car, your very first self-initiated project can't be, I'm going to build a car. It ought to be, I'm going to figure out how to, I don't know, put 4 tires on a piece of plywood. Like, start small.
Attach a motor to my skateboard or something. Go from there.
Pinewood Derby.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. This is very scout related. So yeah, you start off with like 90% of what you know and add in 10% and that kind of thing. So I was like, all right, I want to do, always loved the Muppets, always loved Sesame Street, and I always loved The Simpsons. And I loved this idea of like Sesame Street always kind of felt like the ghetto. Like they never really touched on it, but you kind of got a sense that no one there had a lot of money. And so I always wondered, like, you know, if you went like 4 blocks away, what would that look like? And so I started kind of thinking about like what that world might look like. And so that's where I came up with this concept of Leaky Timbers, where if you had a series of monsters that couldn't afford to live on Sesame Street, because I don't know if the Sesame Street house is like a brownstone, but now with gentrification, whatever that house is that like Maria and Gordon would walk, that thing would be like $10 million.
Right.
Well, so I can't imagine that all the Muppets could live on Sesame Street.
Sure.
So started kind of kicking around this idea of like, oh, well, what if it was this graphic novel that didn't really have a point? It was just all these little jokes strung together with these really simplified characters that felt like a combination of The Simpsons and Sesame Street. So the concept behind Leaky Timbers is it's this run-down, awful apartment that's a few blocks away from Sesame Street, and just what are their lives like? What do they do? That's it. And so started building the book around that, and knew I was going to keep the book very, very simple. Keep it in black and white, 64 pages, like the bare minimum of a graphic novel. Because again, I'd never really done a book before.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get into color. I didn't want to get into like, I'm going to make a 300-page graphic novel. Like, we're going to make
Keep
it
it
like
manageable and.
Right. So these kids that read it now, and it's old. I mean, it's like 4 years old now, the original book. And kids that read it now are like, they get it done in like 10 minutes.
Right.
Whatever. Screw you kids. But anyway, so, Kickstarter had come into play along. It was still very, very early. And my friend Matt Stevens had done a very successful Kickstarter book about Nike shoes. And I had learned a lot through his process and what to do and what not to do. And so I was like, all right, I think Kickstarter is the way to go because I'm, no agent will talk to me, no publishing, nobody will talk to me. So I just need to make this thing on my own. So, the thing with the Kickstarter is the video. Well, I'd always loved the Muppets and I'd always loved Henson and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if I don't want to be on the video?
Sure.
I want to it'd be funny if the characters from the book were trying to sell you on why you should fund their book. So I was like, all right, this would be really interesting. So not only am I going to do a graphic novel, but we'll also get into puppet design and performance and start learning a bunch of stuff that way.
Yeah.
As I was working on the book, I started designing. So Wolfie Monster's the main character. He's like the little blue guy. And he's basically, I'm just going to spill all the secrets.
Yeah, do it.
If you take Monsters, Inc. and you take Sully and Mike Wazowski and mash them together, you get Wolfie Monster.
Okay.
So he's got two older brothers. And so I was like, all right, well, let's just focus on the one character, the one Wolfie Monster. So designed the puppet, and I asked around. I had a few contacts at Disney who had worked with different puppets for their parades. I don't know if they use puppets much anymore for parades or not.
They maybe some, but not as nearly as much as they used to.
Yeah, they have like giant mechanical dragons now. So
right.
Yeah, big
like
steampunk dragons.
So asked around and kind of got a few names. And so a guy named Phil Hatter in Virginia worked with me to design the first puppet. And that was like a dream come true because it was really interesting because I knew nothing about these materials, like what to make the fur out of. I had no idea. And so the way we built the puppet is I designed, did the sketch of what, the scale, here's my hand inside, that kind of thing. And then I would actually take photographs of different Muppets and like highlight, like I would circle, like I like this kind of fur. And he would come back and say, oh, that's boiled fur. Like you would actually take the felt or whatever it's called and boil it. And so that's how you would get like Oscar the Grouch. Like it looks like he's really gross looking.
Oh, man.
So little stuff like that. I had no idea what that was.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting to go through that process. So did a bunch of videos, successfully funded the book, got the book printed. And what was really interesting is now that you had two different audiences, you had some audiences that really liked the book, and then you had other audiences that just liked the puppets. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, all right, so what if we start just, we'll continue to pursue, now that we've got the book printed, let's start taking the book to shows and say, okay, editors, it's me again. Look, I got a book now, so at least I'm competent enough to put a book together.
Right.
So while we're doing that, let's work on expanding whatever these little Kickstarter videos are into a bigger concept. And so as I'm trying to sell the book, I'm going around when I would speak at different conferences, whatever city I was in, I would do a Wolfie video based on that city. And so it was always... so, for example, I did one for Memphis, and so Wolfie came on and did like a whole documentary about the city of Memphis. And, of course, it was wrong. It was not correct information at all.
Right.
And learned a tremendous amount about puppetry and, like, and you'll see this more at Creative South, because Luke and I are going to show a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff from the big TV pitch that we worked on.
Cool.
Yeah.
But you work with monitors on the floor, all the stuff that that Henson did. So nothing really new, but it was just interesting to kind of go through that process myself and see how hard it was to truly puppeteer, and dumb stuff like if you hold a puppet up on screen, you get tired and your hand will kind of technically your hand starts to drift, and the monitors are always reverse of what you see. So if you're going in this way, the monitor is showing you going the other way. So it was just really fascinating to learn all of that and learn video editing and stuff like that. And again, there's no training involved. It's me literally with like a wrench and a pipe banging on them until like something comes out.
Sure.
That's what it felt.
And it goes
like.
from like idea to book, then to real world, so you could create the book, and then taking the book to help you create the real life thing.
It's really weird because like the characters. So we ended up making 3 puppets, the 3 brothers, and it's a good point, because it was interesting, because I do think that the characters got more developed as the puppetry, because when you're developing characters, especially if you want to develop a character that you want to live with forever, like you're like, all right, this is my character, I own it,
right.
I want to do stuff with this forever. Let this be my Mickey Mouse, let him be my Kermit the Frog. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to put that one character in different mediums, because it'll change, how you can perform that character, and it'll allow you to do different things. So with Wolfie, there's things that I can do in the comic that I cannot do with the puppet. So for example, very easy in the comic to let Wolfie run. Well, I can't do that very easily with the puppet. But with the puppet, the puppet can emote and actually have a voice and move physical things and take up physical space. So it was really cool to see, like, the character now is way more developed than it ever would have been. Would I suggest making a puppet to help? I don't know about that, but I wouldn't suggest going down my path for anybody. It was just something where I wanted to do it, and I just said, I'm definitely the kind of person where I'm not going to wait for the opportunity. I would like for an opportunity to come, but if an opportunity does not come, I'm just going to do it myself and see if we can figure it out.
So go ahead.
This is long. No, you can take a break so I can breathe.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask you more. So the way I first got introduced, so I'd been following Seth Worley, and I found out that he worked with you on the video. So talk a little bit about how, you've said a little bit about how the behind the scenes of doing the puppeteering, but actually translating your graphic novel into a video, like with the set and stuff, like, did you have any idea with video production, or did you lean on Seth a lot, or did Luke know any of that stuff, or how did that work?
So, it's really interesting. I think what I really love about, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, when we all think back about like who our creative heroes are, whether it's like Disney or Henson or whoever, Spielberg, George Lucas, it's never those one guys in a shack making magic. It's this wonderful team of people that are collaborating, because I think, when you've got a vision for something, you realize very early on, like you just mentioned, oh my God, I don't know anything about video production. I want to do all these things. Right. How do we do that? I don't know. So I think for me, what I really loved the most about the big pitch video was that it finally gave me that itch to bring in like-minded people to collaborate and make it much better. So of course we had Seth, and then we had Luke Flowers, and then we had Andy Miller, Andy's podcast. Right. And that was really interesting to already kind of have this common language of what the Muppets are and what we're trying to do. So there was none of it, there was no explaining as to what this weird thing is. Let's just do it. So really, with as I'm working on selling a new book, I'm now moving into, hey, what if this actually became a TV show? I don't know what that means. And I'm in Charlotte. I don't know anybody. And I do think that when you're naive, it's a lot easier to kind of move forward with things, because once you start learning things and once you start learning what not to do, you start being reluctant because you're like, ooh, that's not the right way to do it.
You don't know how impossible it actually is. So you just like naively going for it. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's exactly what it was. So, and I'll circle around back to the book in a minute. So we started working on like, well, all these weird videos that we had been doing with the puppets just do not make sense. Like about that time I had an agent come through and said, you know, would you ever be interested in selling these to TV networks? And it was like, yeah, but I'd like to make it make sense, because all these weird like Kickstarter videos with the puppets, like when you take it out of context, none of it made any sense.
Sure. And
it was like, I would much rather like come up with something that was specific for a TV pitch. So there's this, Henson had a really hard time selling The Muppet Show for primetime television. And he made this video. I don't know what the character's called, but it's this guy behind a podium, and he's making a pitch, and I think it's to CBS. And he's just talking about, it's really, really funny. And it's all about like why you should buy The Muppet Show and all these great things. And I thought, how funny is that? Like, what if you took the concept of the Leaky Timbers characters, you know, they were selling the book on Kickstarter. What if they themselves were trying to sell the TV show to these executives?
Yeah.
Like, let's just use, you know, the idea that Henson did and kind of run with it. So that's what we did. So Seth and I worked on a script. I wrote an original script, not worrying about how the special effects were going to get done. Let's just write the script and hear all the jokes. And the reason that I brought Seth in was he and I had a lot of back and forth when I was doing all of the Kickstarter stuff, because he was kind enough to just kind of, you know, give me his time and give me advice. And you know, as you all three know, people that are in like audio, video stuff, it is so amazingly complicated. You just think like, oh, just get a camera and a light and a microphone and let's wiggle some puppets in front of a screen and done. And it's not that at all. Like
puppet wiggling. It's a little bit more complicated than puppet wiggling.
Well, like Frank Oz used to say, like they wiggle the dolls in front of the screen.
Right.
I was like that. I thought that was so funny. But it's so crazy complicated. Like what the three of you guys do to put this show on, people have no idea. Like the amount of work that it takes. Like just dumb stuff. Like.
I'm just going to put that on as my wake up tone every day. Just you acknowledging how difficult this is.
It is. And it's so stupid. It shouldn't be, but it is. It's so ridiculous. But anyway, so, you know, Seth was like, so literally the way that these original videos were shot were just me on the ground, you know, and all the sets are built up. And I say sets like it was a piece of plywood.
Sure.
Yeah.
But a set built up. I did have a fake wall, so I felt kind of Hollywood at that point.
Yeah.
But no camera movement. So it was literally, because I'm by myself. I can't move the camera and the puppet and all these things. So like there was a few times where you would see two puppets on the screen at once. There's one video about Dallas where they're playing a video, or they're playing like a Jeopardy game. And so there's Wolfie acting as the host, and then Roy, who's the big yellow one, is the contestant. And if you look really, really closely, you can tell that that's split. So I'm actually doing both puppets, but it's been spliced together.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was like, all right, so Seth, I need help. Like if I'm going to invest in this TV pitch, you know, like I can't do it at this. I've got to bump it up. Because again, I'm in Charlotte. I'm not in Hollywood. I feel like I've got to make, I forget who it was, but someone said it's kind of like you've loaded up a boat full of fireworks and you're just going to light it on fire. Because it's like, I can't afford to just email like, hey, TV executive, I have this cool puppet idea. Like, we've got to make it. We've just got to show it, because no one's going to take it seriously.
You have to show the value.
Yes. So Seth and I went back and forth for probably... felt like a year. I don't know if it was a full year, but it was a long time, kind of going back and forth with a script and then talking about, okay, what would be involved with this and that. Now, my wife is, Erin, is a photographer, so she already was kind of well-versed in lighting and stuff like that. And well, my gosh, where are we going to get a sound stage? Like, are we even going to shoot on a sound stage? So we were on an absolutely like shoestring budget to put this thing together. And so everybody was so underpaid, but they were great. I really appreciate it. And we literally, so I'm in my kid's playroom. We shot it right here. So the room down there is where like all the puppetry and stuff happened.
Nice.
And at Creative South, you'll see a lot of the behind the scenes, but it's like, imagine you have 5 adults all on top of each other, like, squirming around and
just sweating a bit.
Yeah, just the sweaty ball of puppetry.
So Seth was really good at like explaining, like he would come in and, he's a really good director in the sense that he would say, okay, I want you to do that again, but I'm going to swing the camera around. Don't look at the camera. I want you to keep looking at this thing over here. That's something that I can't do because I'm trying to do the performance, but I can't also I'm not a director.
Right.
He's a director.
Yeah,
and so what he did was absolutely brilliant. And so he was able to like figure out, okay, we composited a bunch of stuff together. So there's a scene where all 3 of the puppets are in this car, and the car was a prop that had a prop builder here, Murray. I was going to call him Murley. There's no L in the guy's name. Murray at Whirly Pig here in Charlotte made me this car. So that was from the comic. It was just blown up, and I redrew it to scale. But now that's up in my office. If I could bring that to Creative South, that would be cool. But I don't see how I could. It won't fit in my car. Oh, it's literally the size of a car.
It is a car.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a car. So it was a cartoon car, and then I made all of these little paper models of the buildings in the city. So we shot that. I don't know what kind of shot it was, but it's shot on green screen, and then we brought the puppets in behind the car, so they're actually in the car behind, shot behind green screen, and then of course Seth's able to composite everything together, and it makes it look like there's traffic and all these things. Then he's able to zoom in, and again, that's stuff that I couldn't do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that if you really want to make something a lot bigger than yourself, you have to identify what your weaknesses are. And you have to be able to objectively, I am not the best writer. I think what I'm really good at are like jokes and funny situations and character development.
Yeah.
I'm not the best at plot. So having someone kind of like stage things really, really helped me. I think that if you ever wanting to do something that's much bigger and you want to collaborate with people, you have to admit like what you really suck at. And then you want to bring in people that you think will help cover up those blemishes.
Sure.
Well, it also seems like this started a bit, even going way farther back, with just self-identification of saying, I don't want to be sitting behind a booth necessarily talking to hundreds of people like every other weekend during the year. That doesn't fit my personality. That doesn't fit what I want. And so I want to go this direction. I mean, it seems like self-identification happened even much earlier in the process. One thing I'm curious with about you, and this is just something based on what you're talking about as far as wanting to make sure that you're protecting these characters, that you're not just trying to sell them off to someone else, but you're making sure that you're building the story, building the appropriate environment, making sure that all that's well constructed. In the kind of back and forth we've had over the past year, one of the things I took away from our conversation was that you take a lot of personal pride in anything that your name is attached to, and I mean that in a totally positive way. So how do you do that? Like, because it's very easy. I mean, because it's very easy if there's an opportunity for money, or there's an opportunity for recognition, or there's an opportunity for whatever. It's very easy to kind of like relax your grip on something, but it doesn't seem like you ever do that. So, how intentional do you feel like that is, and what's your take on that?
It definitely, well, it depends. I think that you can be really loosey-goosey. I can be bought for different things. Like, that's not...
Let the record state, Joey Ellis is available for purchase.
Yes. It just depends. I think, so for example, and this gets into nitty-gritty businessy kind of stuff. One of the reasons that I really want to go into publishing is publishing seems like one of the last vestiges that will pay artists royalties and let them keep the rights to their characters. Not always, but sometimes. Because as I have, again, now I'm doing all this comic work and all this puppetry stuff and losing my mind and doing all this weird stuff. And I'm also running my graphic design and illustration business with like agencies and corporate, stuff.
Yeah.
So they have no idea this weird puppet stuff is going on. And
Sure.
I don't, whatever.
Until now.
And so, I really run into like rights and usage and stuff like that. Like there's just so many companies now that are work for hire, and they just will say we are working. It's for anyone listening that doesn't know, work for hire means you basically get no rights. So for example, we keep talking about Henson a lot, but he's such a great example with like characters and business.
Yeah.
When he started out, he did all these coffee commercials, and it was essentially work for hire, which meant that whatever characters he created, those companies owned outright. So if he created, let's say, Kermit the Frog, and it was a work for hire contract for a coffee company, that coffee company then owns Kermit the Frog. And so if they make a Kermit the Frog toy, the coffee company gets all the money, Jim Henson gets nothing. So back then, I just, even with Disney stuff, like a lot of times, like characters were just not as valuable as they are now. Disney bought Marvel for $4 billion or whatever it was. In the 60s, I bet they couldn't sell Marvel for $1 million.
Sure.
I'm just making that up. But anyway, the point being is that back then,
you said it very confidently, so I believe you.
Whatever. Yeah. That's just me. That's the dad in me. Like whatever I say is a fact. It's just whatever. But so he was able to negotiate these rights. So he first started off and he realized that these companies were basically owning these characters and he wasn't seeing money from that. So he's like, all right, well, I'm no longer going to allow that to happen. So if you work with me, I own the rights to all my characters. So that's all well and good. And again, that's like the 60s and the 70s where, when he negotiated Sesame Street, he owned all the Muppets. He owned all the characters. That would not happen today. If you had, let's say, Nickelodeon approached you and said, hey, we'd love for you to come up with this new show, there is no way that they were going to give you the rights to those characters. Now, if you've got a really good agent, you might be able to get something, but that's just not the way the world works. And I just kept seeing that a lot. So anytime, for example, like if I worked with Facebook to create characters for their little stickers and stuff like that, they owned the rights. They were not willing to negotiate. And so for me, I'm like, the money, the higher rate was fine, or how much were they, whatever the flat fee was that they paid. And they're not going to use them for anything. Like Facebook is not in the entertainment business, at least not yet. I don't know what they're doing now. But like, that's the deal. They're going to, here's a pile of money. It's work for hire. We own all the rights. Take it or leave it. We're not going to negotiate with you. So I just started seeing that over and over and over. So out of all my editorial clients and comics and stuff like that, I think I've only got one client that actually allows me to own the rights to things. So I was like, all right, that's kind of where Leaky Timbers came from. Was like, I'm going to do my own thing. I own it. And nobody can take it away from me because we trademarked stuff. I can't remember what all we did. My wife's like a legal mumbo jumbo whiz kid. But, we own all the copyrights and all that stuff to all those characters. And so if any company were to, strike a deal with us, they then they can't just say we own it. Like they have to.
They're licensing it from you essentially.
Because I own the copyright. Whereas all these others, like I never own the copyright because it's a work for hire contract. The stuff doesn't exist until I sign this work for hire contract. So it was really nice because with Leaky Timbers, because we had done all this stuff with like the puppets and we had already done a first book and stuff like that, when it came time when I finally, years later, got a book deal through Scholastic to do the next Leaky Timbers. It was great. I got everything I wanted. Like it was perfect. And so that made me feel really good to finally get into a situation where that's kind of what I've been hoping. Like, okay, I want to do a major release, but I own the copyrights to these characters, but it's with a group that will love these characters as much as I will. So that's a long. I know that was like a long.
No, that's great.
That's
No, it makes
great,
sense.
Answer.
Yeah, no, but here's the deal. Here's what I think is important, and then we'll shift into our finals, just to be aware of everyone's time.
You guys don't have 3 more hours?
I think.
I mean, we
think
do, but people stop listening at some point.
I think that's not
They
any
already
different
have.
than any
They
other
already
episode. I'm just intrigued. I'm sitting back and just listening to how this whole thing has played itself out, and how you've been diligent in this process, and how, like Patrick said, you've kind of you've stuck to your guns and held on and done things the right way. And you have talked about how it's the level of excellence. You realize that for anyone else to see the value in it, you had to first put the value into it, and so you put the hard work in and the effort. And there's so many things to be gleaned from this that one conversation can't unpack all of the stuff that we just talked about. But as we shift into the finals, I want to know specifically, and maybe this will be a quicker answer, but with the character that Luke Flowers voices, did you intentionally have him voice a character that was so opposite the person that he is?
Oh yeah,
because he's so gruff and he's so like whatever. But then I've met Luke in person and is just the sweetest guy you've ever met in your entire life.
Well, so Andy's the one that actually did the red one. So red one's Jackson, who's just a ball of anger, and Andy's super positive and very sweet. And so I wanted him to do the most negative character on the planet. So yeah, I think that's a lot of fun. I think people that are interested in performing will always enjoy playing their opposites, because it kind of gives them, I think secretly we all want to, if you're a very nice person, I think very deep down, like you kind of want to be a jerk sometimes. And so I think when you get to perform that opposite character,
release.
It's release. Yeah. So, and I would, I mean, they did fantastic. Andy's so great at being angry and hateful, and I wish he would do that more, and he won't. So whatever.
You just mean in his everyday life that he would just be a bigger jerk.
Yes.
Honestly, this conversation really makes me think less of myself, because you're doing so much, and I now feel really lazy in general. So I am actually going to go back to the conversation about games, because Luke missed it. So Luke is the guy that plays like every game. I don't know where he gets them and finds them or steals them.
I don't make any money, so I just play games. Just
all the time. And what happened is, like, you started talking before the show about what you're playing, and Luke's power went out. That's the reason he, like, disappeared
literally
for
lost
a second.
Power. My house powered down, and then it came back up.
Yeah. But so tell everybody again, what are you playing right now? Like, as a family, like, what are the things in your life that are, like, because it sounds like, based on this conversation, you have tons of free time. So what are you filling that up with?
Let's see. We're actually going back through. So my 8-year-old son and I have been going through Skylanders Trap Team, which again is like 3 or 4 years old. Yeah. But it's one of those figure style games where it's like, in order to complete it 100%, you have to have all these figures. Well, now you can find these figures for like 25 cents a piece. Yeah. Like now we can live our dreams. So we've been doing that. Of course, we played Minecraft. Everybody plays Minecraft. We have been playing Zelda, the Breath of the Wild on the Switch. Yep. Got through that. That was super fun. We just did Mario Odyssey, which was fun. We've been playing Rocket League on PlayStation and Xbox. Let's see, what else we have. Fortnite. I watch Fortnite. I don't play it. I watch Battlefront. I think the kids have cooled to Battlefront. I haven't seen them play that in several weeks. It's been nothing but Rocket League and Fortnite have been the two hot games. Yep. And Rocket League is getting ready to come out with the Tim Burton Batmobile, which is like, if they come out, we're getting there. Like, if they come out with like the Ecto 1 from Ghostbusters, you'll never see me again.
Dude.
I will just live in Rocket League.
You're speaking my language. Look right there. Bam.
Yeah, there he is hanging up.
Perfect.
So,
I love that print.
Yeah, man.
Can you do you prefer multiplayer or single player? I'll just let you know, multiplayer stresses me out so much.
It depends on what it is. Like, I like multiplayer co-op. If it's like first-person shooter, like against each other, forget it. Like, I get annihilated. I'm too old and feeble to keep that going. But I really enjoy going through. Now, I like couch co-op, which is really rare these days.
Dude,
Everything's
tell me
like
about
online
it.
co-op. So it's, playing the new Halo was impossible. It's just a single-player experience here at our house. But yeah, I'm trying to think of like the co-op. Minecraft is probably the best co-op.
Yeah.
So is Rocket League.
Yep.
We were playing the SNES classic, The Secret of Mana, which I never played as a kid. That's technically a co-op RPG, which is kind of
strange,
frustrating, but good for them.
Good for them.
Long-term goal is that you play co-op through some Leaky Timbers themed game.
We'll get there. It'll be some sort of an RPG something. I don't know.
I love it.
I love that. Yeah.
Okay, so for my final, I'm going to take us back to Scouts. What's the thing? I mean, you said before that you didn't really plan on getting into that. So what was maybe the thing that was hardest to learn, and what's the part you enjoy most about it?
Knots are the worst.
Okay.
Like, I still am not. So I've been the way Cub Scouts is organized is that you've got the Cub Master, which is like the overseer of the entire pack, and then it delineates you have like a board of parents, and then under that you have what's called the dens, and then the dens are organized by how old the boys are.
Okay.
Well,
until I rename all of them.
Right.
Of course.
Yes, yes. If you want to rename all them, that's fine. I'll pass it on. So I'm at that point where I'm overseeing like a group of specifically. So I'm over the second graders, which we're called the Wolves.
Nice.
So yeah, like knots are the absolute worst.
Okay.
Because unless you like live on a boat, like you don't need knots a whole lot, or unless you're like a cowboy and like you're tying up bad guys.
Right.
You just don't need knots that often.
Yeah.
And knots are something that require constant practice, otherwise you forget it.
Sure.
So I'm always just terrified. Like if we have to get into conversation about knots, I just go to the bathroom. Like I just come up with an excuse.
Yeah, it's the IBS again, everybody.
Yes. And then I love camping. Like I think camping with all of our families and all of our scouts is always a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's just interesting because a lot of times where we go camping, we have no cell phone service. And so you are forced to give up your devices, which I really struggle with. Like I want to be on Twitter and Instagram and whatever all the time. And to not have that is always, it's stressful. I'll tell you what the most depressing thing is when you go into a campsite for the weekend or whatever, and then you come out like 3 days later and you really have like no emails. Like you're thinking like, oh man, here we go. And then you check
Gonna
it
make
and it's
some money.
Like my email's still not working.
I'll get like an email from like Duke Energy where it's like, you could have been more efficient this last month. And that's like the only email. And you're like,
Are you any good at Pinewood Derby? Because I was terrible at it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so I've done lots of different cars. So like this year's car, I've got it right over here, I think. Maybe. You guys should have prepared me. You could have known. Man, now I've got to show it. So this year I did a tank, which was really, really heavy. It was because our pack is really, really big. We've got like 60 kids, something like that. Yeah. And so
that's a lot.
We have enough now. We have enough parents that are also children like me who want to make a car but not follow the rules.
Right.
And so we have what's called like the outlaw race. And so like this year I made a tank which was way too big for the track, and then when it went down it was so heavy it just stopped halfway through. But that's okay. But yeah, like some years I've won and some years I'll come in like dead last. It's just really, really strange. But it takes. I could do a whole presentation at Creative South about Pinewood Derbies. Like,
is there a lot of cheating?
Yeah, like not in our pack, but
like
you've got to be. So cars have to be a specifically 5 ounces. Like they can't be 5.01 or whatever. And now you can be under 5 ounces, but you want to be right at 5 ounces. Otherwise, it's not going to go anywhere.
Sure.
Like you're going to get smoked.
Right.
It's like making weight when you're boxing.
Right. Yeah. So you also want like 3 wheels touching and not 4. So you want that 4th wheel to be kind of up a little bit. It's ridiculous. And you like want to like sand down the axles of the wheel. It goes nuts. You can tell I've been in Scouts for a really long time.
No, it's good, dude.
We put a lot of pride into these cars, and so it's not really about the kids; it's about the dads. But that's okay.
Yeah.
So like you're not allowed, once you turn your car in, you're not allowed to touch it because you could easily like glue a penny and go from like 5 ounces to 5.01 ounces or something crazy. And it will change the outcome of a race. You can't put more graphite on, it's just, you have to make it as even as possible.
Man.
So yeah, I'm like, it's ridiculous. Like, we take it way too seriously.
Now I want a Creative South Pinewood Derby.
That's
what
it.
I want.
It'd be fun. We also do what's called the rain gutter regatta, which is, I prefer that one. So basically, you literally get a rain gutter, where you get 2 of them, and you fill them up both with water, and you make little homemade boats with the sail, and the boys will go down to each side, and they can only use their hot air to like move the boat down the rain gutter, and they're worn out by the end of that event. It's my favorite.
I'm just going to do that every night for my kids. We're going to do that every night to get them to go to bed.
They get to the end of the race and just fall into the ambulance.
All right. So speaking of Creative South, tell everybody where they can hear you, what you guys are going to be talking about, and anything coming up that where people can find you and support what you're doing.
So Creative South is here, whatever it is. What is April? What's the website?
It's like the third week of April or the second week of April.
Okay. So Luke and I, both of our talk and our workshop is still TBD. So Lenny and Mike, if you're listening, please get on that right now. So the talk that we're going to be giving is all about you need to remove like the romance of things. So I think a lot of times we, again, let's just talk about Jim Henson again. You look back on our heroes and all you see is the kind of the highlight reel and the romance of things. And now that Luke and I have gone through the world of legit publishing, and of course he's way more accomplished than I am, but having both gone through the world of comics and real publishing with a real legitimate bookmakers and stuff like that, you realize how much hard work it is. And especially with the TV pitch, there's no romance. It doesn't feel magic or romance when you're on the ground and I'm in Luke's sweaty armpit and we're trying to like wiggle these puppets in front of a camera. Of course, when we look back, it feels romantic. Right. So the whole idea is that, don't give up on whatever it is that you're wanting to make because you feel like you're doing it the wrong way or it doesn't feel right. Like, oh, this doesn't feel like Walt Disney. Like, no. Like, that doesn't exist. Like, none of that stuff exists. So that's what our talk is going to be about. And then our workshop is going to be all about publishing. So we're going to break down all the stuff between like picture books and graphic novels and comics and everything else in between, and talk a lot about what the differences are between all those things. I think to us, we're like, oh, aren't they all the same? Like, if I can do a comic, I can do a picture book. Not to an editor, not to a publisher.
Yeah.
Like, they're very, very different, which is eye-opening to me. Like, I had no idea. So we're going to talk a lot about the differences with that and what the realities of getting into publishing. So if you are interested in like character development, how to put pitches together, like how the industry works, what you should be doing with your portfolio, that kind of thing. We're going to be sharing a lot of our stories. I won't necessarily call it advice because I think things change so much. So, advice I would have given 2 years ago, that's not the advice I'd give now. So it's more about like, here's what we have experienced and here's what we wish we had known before we got into this. So that'll be our workshop, and I think I'll have. I'm going to bring the Wolfie puppet, which will be fun because he's never left Charlotte. So
I was going to say, I'm excited to
interesting.
meet him in person.
It'll be interesting.
Well, so before we head out of here, I would love for you to help us draw some tokens, if that would be helpful.
Right.
Awesome.
Yes.
All right, so that's it for the interview portion. A huge thanks to Joey, but we're going to talk about some tokens. The tokens portion every week is when we get to decide the the categories we have for the following week, and then we pick our topics based on those categories. Here are the tokens. They're very real, very tangible. I'm going to put them face down on my desk. I'm going to shuffle them up. Joey, do us the honors. Give us 1 through 3, and you'll be picking for Luke.
So, Andrew, do you have a script that you're reading in front of, or is this just coming out?
It's just
naturally?
3 years of the same.
No, no script. You know how you know it's not a script because I didn't mess any of it up. It's when I'm trying to read things that it all goes downhill. Yeah, I just shift into like it's like muscle memory for my mouth.
No, that's good. That's impressive. All right, so what are the categories? I wasn't listening.
So you're just picking a number between 1 through 3. So
okay.
You're gonna make it real simple, and we'll flip it over and we'll see what Luke has.
Okay, let's go with 2.
You got toys and games, Luke.
Hey, that's my thing. Thanks.
Okay, 1 or 2, and you'll be picking for Patrick.
1.
Art and design.
Don't even.
That means that I have TV and film. You have no idea, Joey, how perfect that absolutely was for everyone involved. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I cannot wait for Creative South. We'll hang out.
Yeah,
we'll have some drinks. We'll talk about puppets, and who knows what kind of really craziness.
Creepy. Come on down. Drinks and puppets and darkness.
Come check out their workshop. Come check out our workshop. There's so much great stuff happening at Creative South. Just go to creativesouth.com. For us, you can also find us the week before in Baton Rouge. We'll be at Crop, literally just a few days before Creative South. And so if you want to find out more information on that stuff, stay tuned to our social media at M of One Podcast on all the different platforms, or go to mofonepodcast.com where you can find information about meetups and locations and all that jazz. While you're at it, share, like, comment, review, rate. What else might anything? If there's something on the internet, whatever device, whatever format, whatever medium you're listening or watching this on, share that because it's so helpful to us, and it doesn't cost you any money, it doesn't cost you barely any time, but it's super helpful, and it's great. So if you want show notes and links to all the stuff we just talked about, you can find it below if you're watching this on YouTube, or go to mofonepodcast.com. You can find them on there. Am I missing anything? I feel like I might be. Patreon, you can support the show on Patreon. Sure. Go to patreon.com/mofonepodcast. $5 a month gets you the blooper level, and there's some from this week, I can promise you, worth the price of admission. But I think that's it for now. We're going to get out of here. I'm Andrew.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Luke.
Oh, and this is me. I'm Joey.
Peace out.
Bye.
Hold on to your butts.
I don't know what to say here.